Items on today's agenda. My name is Wanda Williams. I'm the Deputy Zoning Administrator for today's hearing items. And the date is December 7th. The time is 9:07 a.m. And for zoning administrator items, we typically ask for a staff presentation. Following the staff presentation, we will allow the applicant or applicant's representative, if they are present, to provide any remarks that they need to, typically for 3 minutes. If I need to extend that for some reason, we will do so. Following that, we will open up the hearing for testimony by any member of the public. You don't need to live nearby or within the noticing area. So any interested party may provide comments, either in support of, in opposition to, just general comments, or ask questions about an item on our agenda for a scheduled hearing. And before we begin with item number 1, which is a continued item, I am going to indicate that item number 4 on the agenda has been withdrawn. So if you're here regarding item number 4, we're not going to take any testimony on that at all. Items number 5, 6, 7, and 8, there will be a request to continue those until December, I believe December 21st. Is that the date?
Correct.
However, because notices did go out for items 5, 6, 7, and 8, and we just determined that we need to continue those items because of a noticing requirement. If you are present and you wish to still provide comments, either supportive, in opposition to, or ask questions, we will still give you your 3 minutes today on those items. Those items are all individual Microsoft Tower requests, so we will take them all individually. I think that they are at the end of our agenda. So having said that, we're going to go ahead and begin with item number 1 on our agenda, which is a continued item, application 171372 for 4665 Soquel Drive in Soquel. It's APN 030083132. The item was continued by the zoning administrator on November 16th, 2018. Was it for a noticing issue? Why was that continued?
Yeah, specifically, the project was noticed sufficiently, but the location of the notice of proposed development was, they wanted to move it to a more visible location.
Okay. So the proposal itself is to construct a new roof-mounted wireless communications facility at an existing commercial building, also known as Wilson's Tire in Soquel. The project consists of the construction of two 2-foot-high panel antennas that would be camouflaged as stovepipes above the roof line and constructed within a 4-foot-high roof-mounted enclosure. The roof-mounted enclosure would consist of a 250 square foot area. It would be screened with associated appropriate equipment, and the project includes an 84 square foot leasing area for ground-mounted equipment, which is required to operate a wireless communications facility that would be located on the north side of the building of Wilson's Tire. The project requires a commercial development permit per the Santa Cruz County Code, and also requires acceptance of a notice of exemption, which is allowed per the California Environmental Quality Act. This property is located, as noted, at 4665 Soquel Drive on the northwest side of the intersection of Soquel Drive and Porter Street. The owner is Alan Dow. The applicant is Tricia Knight. It is located in Supervisory District 1. The project planner is Nathan Macbeth, and we will ask for a full staff report.
Just to clarify, the project description it indicated that the stovepipe, the antennas are located outside of the roof mount enclosure.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So as indicated, this item was originally heard by the zoning administrator on November 16th, and though November 16th was a duly noticed public hearing, it was determined that the location of the notice of proposed development could have been placed in a more visible location, and the item was continued for that reason. The applicant has confirmed the relocation of the signs and through submission of a sign installation certificate dated the same date of the previous public hearing, essentially went out the day of that hearing and reposted the sign. It includes a photograph of the sign contained as shown in your packet, indicating that the sign has been placed at the corner of Soquel Drive and Porter Street, clearly visible from the intersection. Since the previous hearing, staff has received a number of additional phone calls and correspondence, essentially all in opposition of the project. Primary issues raised were wireless emissions concerns, decreased property values, and other health-related issues. There was some concern about the nonconformity of the Wilson's Tire business, as well as potential challenge to the CEQA determination. As stated at the previous hearing, staff would recommend modifying condition 2A3 to read as follows. Existing parking located on the subject parcel and adjacent APN 030-08131 shall not be eliminated, and final plan shall show 8 existing parking spaces extending to the north of the proposed lease area A, as shown on the project plans. Staff recommends that a determination of the project be exempt from further environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act, and approval of application 171372 based on the attached findings and conditions as revised at the November 16th hearing.
Okay, so we received communications regarding this item.
That's correct.
And can you summarize generally, were the communications generally in support of the request or generally in opposition, and the reasons for either support or opposition?
Yeah, all of the correspondence and comments and phone calls I received were in opposition to the project.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, again, like I said, it's property values, impacts to property values, wireless emissions concerns. There's a number of schools in the area, and potential health-related issues. Additionally, just a bit of history on this one is that a previous project, wireless facility, was proposed and approved on the adjacent building to the west of the project site. And that, yeah, after several hearings, was approved, and that site was never constructed due to leasing issues. So this site is essentially to augment the other site that was never.
How far away was the other site?
Is immediately adjacent. I mean, they share a common wall.
Okay, so within 15, 20 feet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And was that a roof-mounted facility also that was approved?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to note before I ask any further questions that I received 3 telephone calls, communications regarding this project, and I believe the other wireless facility projects on today's agenda. So I will pass on that information later on, the names of those individuals. What is the zoning for the property?
So C2.
And C2 zone allows wireless communications facilities?
That's correct.
With the restrictions or?
No restrictions.
Okay. Once again, what is the proposed height of the facilities?
Maximum height's approximately 20 feet.
Okay.
20 feet?
Let me clarify. The building is 18 feet high.
Okay.
And the facility would rise 2 feet above the building.
Okay. And then it's a 84 square foot ground equipment area.
Correct.
Are there any nearby schools or preschools?
Yes.
Okay, within 1,000 feet?
Correct.
Okay, what is the nearest one approximately, do you know?
Soquel High School is the closest.
Okay. But you indicated there was a previous one that was approved for the adjacent property.
Correct.
So it would have been basically the same distance from Soquel High.
That approval was wrong and...
Okay, and you know what? Everyone will get their opportunity. You will be given 3 minutes. If you need to speak out beforehand, we're going to ask that you be removed or that you go out in the hallway. We will give everybody 3 minutes to address each item. This is the time for staff and zoning administrator to discuss the item.
We can't ask questions?
No, not at this time, ma'am. You will be given your 3 minutes. Let me explain this once again. For zoning administrator items, I typically ask the staff to conduct a presentation. Following that, I ask the staff any questions or we discuss any items that I need clarification on. It's not open for public discussion at that point. When we open the hearing for public discussion, we will allow the applicant or the applicant's representative to come forward first to address the item. Following that, they will provide additional information. So the public will be further informed regarding what they are requesting. Then following that, we will ask any other member of the public to come forward and give you 3 minutes to address the item as well. 3 minutes. We're not going to allow 4 minutes, 5 minutes. You'll be given 3 minutes. If I need clarification or have questions, I will then pose those for whoever the speaker is. But as indicated, if we get rowdy, if we get out of order in here, we're going to have you removed, or we will take a break from the hearings. We're not going to have discord or disharmony regarding these items this morning. Okay, having said that, you said Soquel High School is nearby. Was this applicant required to consider other locations as part of this request? Is that required?
The code doesn't require an alternatives analysis,
Okay.
but they did provide a necessity case, which indicated that that this project, this facility would fill a gap in their coverage.
Okay. And you indicated it would be screened. How is it going to be screened? How are the items going to be screened?
Yeah, the roof mounting equipment, it would be contained within a like a parapet wall, a small roof mount enclosure. That's the majority of the equipment. The antennas themselves will be camouflaged as stovepipes. And then the ground mount equipment is on the north side of the building. It's out of public view, and there's a small wall that's there currently.
Okay, I'm going to have some additional questions later on, but at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. As indicated, first person or individual to speak is the applicant or applicant's representative. If you're present, please come forward, state your name for the record. We will give you 3 minutes to address this item. Good morning.
Good morning. Tricia Knight representing Verizon Wireless. I believe staff did a great job of summarizing the project. We are, in essence, doing the alternative site here due to the fact that we were unable to obtain the lease on the adjacent building. I see a fair amount of people here that would like to comment, so unless you have any specific questions for me, I'll wait until after public.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Did you look at other locations?
The adjacent buildings, yes,
Okay.
yes, we did. And this turned out to be something where we could construct it. It was allowed by the zoning code, and it was feasible for the engineers.
Okay. Are you looking at installing other facilities nearby?
Specifically for the section of Verizon that I work with, not at this time. As you can clearly see, there's another agent that's working with Verizon that sounds like they do have some active applications.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all that I have. Okay, so now we will open up the hearing for additional testimony from other members of the public who are not the applicant or applicant's representative. If there's anyone present, you may come forward at this point and, one by one if you want to come forward, and we will give you 3 minutes to address this item. And please state your name for the record. You don't need your address, just give us your name for the record.
It's Letitia Miller, and Wanda, I believe, if I can call you Wanda,
Yes, that's
you and
fine.
I met before in Aptos. And you finally approved this thing that they promised they were going to take care of. The pole was going to be beautiful. And this is the one that goes as we go off the Rio Del Mar Boulevard. There was a pole,
Yes.
and they were going to do this new pole, make it all beautiful. I don't know if you've driven by there. I see it every time. The pole is now leaning like this. They did nothing. A good wind that gets in there is going to just come right on down that building. But that's what we've already approved. I have a building at 4600 Soquel Drive. It's a village. Okay, there's restaurants, there's schools all around it. I mean, I think there's more than schools, just one school within 1,000 feet. They could go to another location. There's lots of places. The fire department has a tower there. They're going to remove theirs. I think they have not done their job. We're going to, by looking at this, we're going to have a cloud over our head of all Verizon cells. In Aptos alone, they have 24 on one roof. This is not the end of Verizon. Let them go and start searching for other locations. There are better places. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we have the next speaker, ma'am, I'd just like to ask, after the hearing, if you can give your name to staff. I'm sorry, I don't need your name. I just need the location of the previous wireless facility in Aptos that I approved, because I'd like to follow up on that. If that's leaning, we need to take care of that. We need to make sure that the applicant corrects that. Okay.
I'm Colonel Michael Maxwell, and I am a Soquel resident. In addition to that, I'm knowledgeable about the dangers and harms to all of us of excessive cell towers and wireless activity. I'm very disappointed you didn't ask the Verizon lady, let's have her come back and explain if there's any prospect of this same location being utilized for the threatening 5G that Verizon's also trying to inflict on all of us. I'm very disappointed you didn't have more probative questions and questions for her. I'm also disappointed your staff was not forthcoming about the young children in a number of school activities within this facility's envelope. Not just the high school. There's also, and he completely neglected to mention, down the street is the Soquel Elementary School. Again, another one. And the preschools mentioned. Again, Verizon is dishonest, and this county government fails to protect the public time and time again. You do not have to cave in to the 1996 Telecommunications Act. In fact, in Marin County, the city of Fairfax, for the last 20-some years, has outlawed and restricted wireless cell phone activity by the industry. People are healthier there, by the way. The cancer rates are lower in that town than anywhere in California. And speaking of cancer rates, anybody approving this, anybody pushing this technology, anybody approving it, anybody standing aside and not doing their job to protect the public, which each of you as sworn public employees have a duty to also do, so do the supervisors. If there's any karmic justice in this planet among the thousands and millions of people who will get cancer from Verizon's activity, will be you guys who approved it, who failed to do your jobs, who failed to find out the actual facts and stand up for the science, the medical and scientific evidence. These things are dangerous. And the 5G, how could you fail to ask if they're going to push this to 5G? Because that's their real plan. Does your staff have any knowledge of the impacts of 5G? Disapprove this. Do your sworn duty to the taxpayers and citizens of this county.
Okay, thank you. So, when we're through, we'll ask the applicant at the end of the hearing if this is for 5G purposes. Come on, sir.
Good morning. My name is Riley Gerbright, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak. First, a question: is this testimony time just for this particular application?
Yes, it is.
Great. So on this application, I'm curious. The county code in 1310-660D says that for proposed rooftop or ground-mounted antennas, a temporary mast approximating the dimensions of the proposed facility shall be raised at the proposed antenna mast location. And it goes on to say, a project description including a photo simulation of the proposed facility shall be posted at the proposed project site for the duration of the mock-up display. And I'm curious if this was undertaken.
Okay. We'll get an answer for you on that.
Great. And then I'd like to put this forward for the record. It's a document, it's a letter that Senator Blumenthal and our own representative, Anna Shute, in this county, put forward to the FCC on Monday the question, so they're questioning 5G, so I'm really interested with also the response from Verizon's applicant regarding the 5G potential at this location. It also puts forward testimony about the November 2018, that's just last month, the 18-year study by the NTP, which shows that it's the longest reaching study, most expensive study in the world, and it was commissioned by our own Department of Health at the federal government. And this is what Senator Blumenthal and Anna Shute said. That study, which began in 1999, is limited in scope to radio frequency radiation associated from 2G and 3G cell phones, and that's because at that time that was only technology in place. As you know, this study found evidence of cancerous heart tumors, as well as some evidence of cancerous brain tumors in male rats exposed to high-frequency radio frequency radiation like those in 2G and 3G cell phones. However, researchers have cautioned the findings do not apply to 4G or 5G technology because we just don't know. So the question, they said, we believe it is critical for the FCC to act on their rulemaking notice, and basically we need to find out if this does have an effect on human health.
There's no question it does.
And then someone mentioned the Firefighters Association. So they're exempt from the current PUC rule because the firefighters have said that it causes dysfunction, ADD, memory loss, things like that. So, and we know that in schools that's happening rampantly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you need that piece of paper for the record?
Yes, thank you. You said your name, we'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, Deputy Williams. My name is Dan Jordan. I'm a fire captain with Central Fire. I work at the Soquel station, so I'm very aware of what's going on. As the former mentioned, the IFF is unilaterally said we do not want these in our stations. The 2 largest firefighters unions in the state have said the same thing, and so that's not happening. Those counties that have said not at our stations are large counties with large stations. What I do want to bring up is that our station is 400 feet from the site. Terra Redwoods preschool is 400 feet from the site. Soquel Elementary is a quarter mile from the site, and actually furthest of the bunch is Soquel High School. So that was misinformation. Central Firefighters Local 3605 unilaterally disagrees with this. We oppose this. We don't want it. We've taken on, with our positions in public safety, the risk of exposures to carcinogens, and we assume that in the interest of public safety. I think your department has the opportunity now to look out for our interest and oppose this so that we don't get further exposures that we didn't sign up for. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on item number 1 on our agenda? Good morning. Please state your name for the record. We'll give you.
My name is Noreen Bailey, and I actually have 2 grandsons who are attending the Main Street School. Nobody mentioned the Main Street School. That's the other elementary school that's in this area that we're talking about. I'm really going to urge you all to, before you, and hopefully you won't approve this, but you really look into the dangers of the frequencies that it's going to be submitting onto our children. Our children are struggling as it is, and I think that we need to do, as adults, we need to do what we can to avoid any extra electromagnetic frequencies that they're getting, because they're already getting a lot, even in the schools, because the schools have Wi-Fi. A lot of the schools have Wi-Fi that the kids are using their computers on. So I'm urging you to please, please, please think about the future of our children, the health of our children. They're our future. So good luck with your decision, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk.
Good morning. Please state your name for the record. 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Becky Steinbruner. I would like clarification from staff. I didn't see it in the report about the parking, the number of parking spaces. I am a customer of Wilson Tire, and parking in there is a real challenge, especially at that very busy intersection. Reducing any parking to accommodate this service access for this installation would pose a hazard to traffic at that intersection. It's already very dangerous trying to get in and out of there. I would also like to ask that staff requires the applicant to submit records substantiating the need for further service here because there's a gap in service. I would like to see their documentation and verification of a gap in service and the need, therefore, for this installation. I also recognize in the staff report that this is located in a flood zone and geologic hazard zone. In times of flood and natural disaster, the applicants would not be able to access their installation to provide and secure emergency communication for cell phone users that would depend upon this to perhaps call 911 if there really truly is a gap in service and would pose a hazard without this. I would also like clarification on the height. The building staff says is 18 feet tall, and yet these stovepipes, it has been said, are 4 feet tall. So I think the whole thing is going to be higher than 20 feet. I would also like to point out that at this last Tuesday's Board of Supervisor meeting, and you can check that in the open comment, Dr. Sawyer, a doctor in the area, stood up and said there has been a shocking increase in the number of angioglioma cases. It's a rapid, aggressive brain tumor growth in children. It has never before been seen in children, but they're seeing it now. That tells us, and several scientific studies not funded by the industry are telling us that this is very dangerous technology, especially for those young people with thinner skulls, and we need to really think twice about this new installation that is near so many schools and preschools. I would like to also point out that the parents of all these students maybe were not noticed. Maybe I'm happy to see some of them here. But were all of those people noticed, as well as the County Office of Education, and urge this county to take on and follow the good example of Monterey County that has put on a much more stringent setback rule. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Brian Anthony. I'm a chiropractic physician in Soquel Village. I opposed the last cell tower, which was approved. It was, as mentioned, adjacent. As far as I know, we have great coverage in the village. We don't need a cell tower there. Verizon can do their due diligence, site a cell tower outside of the village. As mentioned, we have Soquel High right up the street. We have Soquel Elementary right down the street. We have Tara Redwood Daycare just up the street. There's the karate school with all the kids there. There's a daycare up at the high school. As mentioned, the kids' skulls are thinner. The microwave radiation penetrates more easily. We're seeing heart arrhythmias as well as cognitive and mental effects from microwave radiation. We don't need a cell tower in the village. There's plenty of historic buildings there. If we can't oppose it strictly on environmental and health reasons, let's do it because we don't need it in our village.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on item number 1 on the agenda? Good morning. Please state your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Good morning. I'm Caroline Homeland, and I'm a victim of EMF radiation. And I'm talking about it now because I did 25 years in Silicon Valley, and I worked for all the major big companies. I had my own business. I was successful, and all the money I made went to save my life. I wear protective gear. I go to lots of different health establishments. I do yoga, tai chi. I do everything to stay alive. And I have this materials on now. If you love your life, if you love having a brain that can remember where you're going and where you're coming back to, you're ahead of our birds, our bees, and our butterflies, and now our babies are in jeopardy too. I just got a little piece of information I'd like to read from PG&E. Just sent this to me in my bill today. And it says right in here, can EMFs harm your health? It's the question. The varying results from etymological studies which looked at established EMF exposures and childhood leukemia, specifically childhood leukemia, are consistent with a weak link. Laboratory studies, including studies investigating a possible mechanism for health effects, provide little or no evidence to support this weak link. You know, if there's any link at all, our babies shouldn't be exposed to it. I'm praying for those little children every day that have to go through chemotherapy and all those solutions that are not helping them stay alive, but minimally. I too haven't got cancer, but I've had tumors on my thyroid. I've had a Lyme disease. My immune system is affected. All of it from exposure to electromagnetic fields in the environments that I worked in Silicon Valley. Not just chemicals too, there was chemicals as well. And of course, we're all exposed to a soup every day of chemicals, and now this 5G. And how can we have this raining down on all of us without an environmental impact? Why are we shoving it through like a draconian dictatorship? And the only other countries that want to put this in, there's no country in the world except Korea and China. They're despotic. They're draconian countries.
Bravo.
Item number 1 on our agenda. Please come forward and state your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Satya Orion. I'm also an electrically sensitive person. I used to love technology. Actually, I still do. About 4 years ago when I lived in Marin, I became overexposed to all the cell towers and all the radiation there. And it's very hard for me to be here today, actually, with the towers on the roof here and the electronics. But I feel it's important to be here. I will never be able to go to Soquel Village again if this tower is put on the roof of Wilson's tire. And it feels just really hard for me. There's a lot of places I can't go anymore. Like right now, I can feel my heart palpitating and tinnitus ringing in my ears. I live with this all the time. And as this keeps increasing, it makes it so that I can't go anywhere. And electrohypersensitivity is now recognized as a disability. So under the ADA, I feel that this makes it an unfair situation for me to go anywhere. Even though I may be in the minority, there are many more of us now. Many of us don't speak because we're ridiculed, not taken seriously. Many people can't feel the effects, but they are being affected nonetheless, has been shared already. I also would like to know what the need for this tower is, the gaps in service proving that. It doesn't seem to me. I've heard many people testify. There's plenty of coverage already, so it's hard for me to understand what the possible justification could be unless there is future plans for 5G, which we've been told by Verizon is in the works coming next year. We have that documented. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate all the speakers so far. I think everything they've said. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jeffrey Shuey. I normally don't speak too much in public about this kind of thing, but we are at a time now in our society that we're in a major destructive time, and we all need to stand up and make it known that this technology, like many of our technologies, is out of control. And the forces that want to continue doing this have to live in major denial. And those of us who have the potential to approve it, we really have to look within ourselves and say, what are we doing? Because this is just one of many of the conditions now that assault us. We live in a soup of toxins. And so do we want to add one more toxin to it? I mean, we already have it. So if this is 5G, it's even, of course, worse. But if it's any number of other electromagnetic, forces, we're in the same trouble. So I just, on an ideological level, we have got to wake up. And that means those of you who are in positions of power that can take effective action, you need to do it. You need to do it because for our children. I mean, I just have a grandchild now, and I'm saying, oh my God, how can I keep her out of as much of the destructive forces that are existing, let alone on the political level. I mean, let alone on the physical level. But we're talking about this is a awesomely bad news idea, and so I just hope that you summon up, whatever you can, summon from within yourself whatever you can, your own personal integrity, to take the conscientious solution. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Brian. As mentioned earlier by a gentleman a little while ago, the largest animal study done so far on normal cell tower exposure proved that in rats, the rates of cancer in the heart and the brain were way higher than normally. So there's already been proof. I know there are lots of things you can go on the internet, read about this or that, and it's questionable where the research is coming from. But this study is a solid study that has proved that normal exposure causes increase of risk in cancer. And so, with that in mind, I'm thinking, like, if somebody told me, like, hey, I have this great technology I'd like to put in your backyard, and I'll give you $3 million. And I said, wow, that's great, $3 million. Tell me about it. They said, well, it's really great, it does this and that. So are there any risks? And I said, well, there has been a large study done with rats showing that they got cancer by being exposed to this. Do you still want the $3 million? No, I don't think so, right? So if you think of it that way, just knowing that there's been studies, and also the International Association for Research in Cancer says that cell phone towers are possibly carcinogenic. So I'm afraid that maybe this is more about money than health, and that the money both for Verizon, and I don't know what kind of arrangement there is with Soquel, but I'm afraid that the money is blinding people to the possibility that this could be a huge health hazard. And if you think of it personally, do I want this in my backyard? Even probably people who work at Verizon, if you ask them, well, my time's almost up. Do you want this in your backyard? I bet you most of them would say no, not in my backyard, but it would be fine if it was in Soquel or Live Oak. Thank you.
Please state your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is John Doan. I urge the Board of Supervisors to unanimously deny the proposed installation of this microwave cell tower atop the tire shop in Soquel. Neither applicant nor owner can offer any meaningful assurance that the public will not suffer harm from the electromagnetic frequencies emitted by such towers into our organs, our tissues, our blood cells, our immune systems, our neurotransmitters, our mitochondria, cellular energy generators, our hormones, and the very strands of our DNA. Unlike the governments of virtually all of our allies and trading partners in Northern Europe and in the Mediterranean, our own federal government has been ineffectual in demanding research and reasonable safety parameters to protect Americans from the greed-induced assault on our communities launched by the telecom industry. I therefore call upon you, our county supervisors, to stand as a firewall in our defense. No cell in Soquel. Send Verizon to the horizon.
Good morning. Please state your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
I'm Joanne Wildfeld, and I reside in Scotts Valley. I want to discuss also the EMF issue, radiation, 5G issue. 5G is extremely dangerous. It's going to operate in 24 to about 90 gigahertz. At 60 gigahertz, your body cannot absorb oxygen from your red blood cells. It will be turned up and down from AI, and it's going to be controlled from satellites beaming down on us, thousands and thousands of us. We won't be able to turn Wi-Fi off at night like many of us do when we sleep. It's going to be in the higher frequencies called milliwaves. Milliwaves, the military uses it for crowd control that burns the skin so that people disperse. They also use it for their enemies to control minds. Milliwaves, it's researched. They want to put multiple cell towers, mini cells, small cells, slightly underground, some above ground, that will be every 3 to 5 homes. This is absolutely mind-boggling. They want to put large cell towers in our neighborhoods. The large cell towers, I'm from originally the Southwest. The cell towers are placed along the highway in very open areas. They don't put cell towers next door to homes. Harvard, UC San Diego, UC Berkeley, the Santa Clara Health Department, they're all saying no. Plus, about 101 scientists from around the world are saying no to this dangerous technology. We know, and it's been studied, that microwave radiation causes brain tumors, thyroid tumors, cardiac issues, sexual organ cancer, and neurological conditions. This is studied. There are representatives in government that are actually taking care of their citizens. Mill Valley has fought 5G. Boca Raton, Florida has fought 5G based on vanity. They said they get a lot of tourism and they don't want tourists to see all these towers and ugly wires that they are putting in. However, they are fighting it. And so far, 5G isn't going in those areas. We want our government to protect us. It is very dangerous. There is no way to get away from this. You would have to leave the earth. They want to do this globally. or dig yourself underground, like a storm shelter in order to survive this. No one is immune from this.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Your time
Thank
is
you.
up. Thank you.
Give my 3 minutes to someone, would that be possible? Can I, to Dr. Chase, Mr. Chase, Professor Chase?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm Rima Anthony, by the way, and I'm a Soquel resident, and I also work in Soquel. Thank you very much.
So I have 6 minutes.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Yes.
My name is Glenn Chase. I'm a professor of environmental economics. I'm considered an expert in environmental toxins. I've testified at the Public Utility Commission, and my information has been delivered to the court such that PG&E has now been required to give people an opt-out not to have a smart electric meter on their home. I want to talk to you. I understand the Telecommunication Act. There are interpretations where you don't automatically have to, in other words, it says environmental. It doesn't say specifically health. So we've somehow added health to environmental. You can't stop it for environmental reasons because that way birds and lagoons and things in different states would be so many different amounts of time to get the thing rolled out. But that was 1996. We're way past the initial rollout. The government does have a general responsibility for general safety. I'm going to avoid health and give you some methods to turn this thing down or at least postpone it. So they have a responsibility to the public in the area for general safety and not to apply undue burden on the residences or the residents or businesses of any area within their jurisdiction. I'm going to start with the previous approval. The previous tower was approved in a very similar area, and it also involves a contract with the owner, and I have comments from the owner. And this is a public document anyway. It says, indeed, I called the deal off with Verizon after it was approved because after months of working with members of our community alongside Verizon's engineers to come up with a design that we felt was responsive to the well-being and safety is not health, of the nearby businesses, Verizon presented us with a lease that would have given them the unilateral right to replace the design we had agreed upon with one as big, as powerful as they want in the future, effectively conceding eminent domain of my property to them for the next 25 years. So if this is approved, it would need to be approved in conjunction with the existing Verizon contract with the individual to take the responsibility for safety and undue burden on a community. There's one method to approach it. I'm going to read a copy just quickly of the Verizon contract. Excerpt. Leasee, which is Verizon, shall have the right to replace, repair, add, or otherwise modify its equipment and antennas. So when we talked about it's within FCC allowances, we have no absolute idea of any kind where it ends up the day after they put it on. Another way that we can look into that and go forward. The other thing is the owner of this property has signed for, there's two owners of this particular property. The community has tried to contact the second owner. They're unable to find them so far. The existing owner that signed the document, we can't confirm that it was signed for both owners, but he took responsibility, is 86 years old. Presidents do not run for office at 86 years old. It would be nice if that individual came here because the community feels that Verizon is taking advantage of an individual regarding because they took advantage of an individual in his 40s who then read the contract and rejected it after approval. There's a feeling that there's some indication of some kind of elderly abuse involved here, and we'd like to see the 86-year-old man come into this room and see that he really understands what he's signing, and there would be no problem extending this until we can find the second owner. trying to give you methods of pushing this back so we can get to the truth. A specific one is the ground unit of the electric. Normally these ground units are put in dead-end areas at the back of a building where no one goes. A very specific way to reject this facility is that this is being placed, the ground unit is in a corridor. It's only 23 feet from the one building to another. I've researched and it was found out, that there is a Thai restaurant and a tire shop on the same lot, which would never be allowed by current standards. And it ends up that the distance between the Thai restaurant and the tire shop is so narrow, but it's also a corridor right now. And this morning, as I drove by to check on it, something like a UPS truck was stuck in the corridor because when cars park there, it seems okay. So people walking into the Thai restaurant are being exposed unknowingly. People in the servicemen going to the ground unit are wearing shields. There are no shields for the people walking in. And this morning, because cars were parked, the UPS type truck couldn't get through the corridor. It had to back up. A private individual was behind the UPS. It backed up into the intersection and created congestion where there was almost an accident. And then someone, I think it was just a good Samaritan, walked out into the street, stopped traffic, and got people to clear. If you look at the distance they're allowed and how many parking spaces, that's for a dead unit, not for a corridor. So I've given you a number of reasons why you could at minimum extend this. I would hope personally that you determine that this place is an undue burden on the community.
Exactly.
And one other thing, a correction, the fire station and the schools are only 200 feet away, not 400 as the fireman said.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Item number 1 on our agenda that would like to. Item number 1 on the agenda.
I'll say something.
Good.
Good morning. Please state your name for the record. We'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Karen. I just wanted to say a little bit about what democracy means to me. Democracy means having a say in things and policies that affect me and my children as U.S. citizens. And I would view the implementation of 5G without independent studies and without our consent as an assault on democracy. And I beseech you to be an advocate on the part of democracy in our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. Not spoken yet on this item that would like to do so. Please come forward and state your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
To address the 5G.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Rahmat Martin. I'm a 47-year resident of this county. I'm not a radical, naive, environmental fundamentalist. I began my adult life with a science, engineering education at Stanford University. I've spent about 2/3 of my working life in the world of telecommunications. In the early 90s, I was a co-founder of a Silicon Valley startup business that bridged the world of the internet with the world of wireless data communications. I left the corporate world as one of the senior executives in that company about 15 years ago and went out on my own to begin to help people solve problems in their life. In that role, I began to receive questions and requests from people who were living with challenging issues, such as they could not sleep any longer at night, or they had uncomfortable buzzing in their brains during the day. I acquired an instrument that enabled me to measure for extensive dirty energy, EMF, Wi-Fi, and then the rapidly increasing amount of use of so-called smart meters. But I can assure you, they are anything but smart. We live in a time when the global elite have increased their control over society and all of us in a broad diversity of ways. But with the focus here this morning on cell towers, in my limited time, I will only comment on this. The proliferation of powerful cell towers is very dangerous. The wireless industry is now beginning to deploy their so-called Generation 5 or G5 towers. This is beyond insane, and it is cruel to all living things, from the animals the trees, the plants, all those who fly and swim, and not to be missed, but indeed us humans. We must not allow this. Research scientists have determined that the effects of exposure to EMF are cumulative. We need to stand up like one of the communities in Marin County recently did and outlaw the installation of any G5 networks in their community. We cannot expect or hope that the federal agencies such as the FCC will protect us. Like virtually all federal agencies, this is an industry-controlled network of the global elite. Like myself, committee members who live or visit the vendors in the Soquel Village, we will not agree to any installation of a new cell tower in the village, and it should be understood there are 5 schools within the affected zone of this proposed cellular installation. And the members of this board should know that we will not agree to this. We will be taking strong action against the board. We will rise up in rebellion and reject these board members. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that has not spoken on this item?
You were going to ask the Verizon representative.
Sir, we're not through with the testimony. There are people coming forward. I made a note of your question.
Marilyn Garrett, part of Wireless Radiation Alert Network. I have been coming here for about 18 years since I retired from teaching on this issue of the hazards of wireless microwave radiation. Wanda, I've probably seen you about 100 times, right? And I have given you Dr. Barry Trower's testimony. He is an expert of microwave radiation weaponry, who worked in the British Secret Service, and he said these are the same frequencies and power densities they used in the military to debilitate people as is used in Wi-Fi and other wireless technology. You have commented publicly that you found that document quite credible. Recently, on last Tuesday, I left a copy of a very recent testimony in October by Dr. Sharon Goldberg in Michigan regarding the 5G legislation there. It's a 15-minute segment, and my question is, did you view it?
I have not had a chance to. I've got it here with me.
I consider that essential homework. Find that disappointing. Regarding the testimony here today, it's very clear this is a huge problem, an assault upon the community and our health, an assault on school children. And some years ago, I just find it really unconscionable. I'm going to leave a copy. The superintendent, then superintendent of school, Dr. Pagano, 2006, wrote a letter to the Congregational Church on High Street asking them to put on hold any plans for a cell tower there, which was adjacent to Westlake School, until he said there may be conflicting perspectives, but when it comes to children, we need to be protective, and then to put on hold plans for a cell tower at your site until it's conclusively proved to be safe. That's what we need, is conclusive proof that this does not endanger our health and safety. The evidence is otherwise. This is a hazardous technology, and Dr. Sharon Goldberg made it very clear there. So I'm going to leave you this, and my other question is, did you read what I submitted at the last CA meeting on this site?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
Thank you. For the record. Good morning.
Joanne Wallfeld, Scotts Valley resident. I just want to say 3 things quickly. In 1996, the FCC Act was put into place, to supposedly allow competition between telecoms. One of the other things it allows is that telecoms can come into our neighborhoods and our town centers and put any kind of electronic device in our neighborhoods and town centers, which I call weapons of mass destruction, because these are anywhere, anytime, without the local municipalities being able to actually fight this. They can be heard, but they really have a battle to fight this off. And as I said, Mill Valley, Boca Raton, there are some other communities that have fought them off at this point. I feel that the actual etiology of a lot of what we're dealing with as human beings, also our animals, our environment, is we must repeal this 1996 FCC Act so that we don't have to every few years fight the telecoms off from putting very dangerous electronics in our homes and our town communities. I've worked in the health field for many decades, and I want to say that if we had to live in 24 to 90 gigahertz, 24/7, I cannot see how humanity, the animals, the birds or bees, will be alive in 3 years of living under 5G. We just don't have the biological cells to do so. And third, we do have an EMF Santa Cruz group. We'll be glad to talk to you in the hallway after the meeting if anyone is interested. Thank you very much.
That would like to do so. If you've not spoken yet on this item, please state your name for the record and we will give you 3 minutes. Good morning.
Suzanne Davis. Good morning. I would just like to say I think there's a lot of pretending going on here. There's a property owner who pretends he has a right to do whatever he wishes on his property, despite causing ill effects to his neighbors. There is a telecom industry pretending that coercion of the public through illegitimate laws created by that industry with the collusion of lawmakers is acceptable, and industry pretending that wireless technology is safe based on science that they bought and paid for. Finally, there are public officials who pretend they represent their constituents, people of their own neighborhoods and communities, while denying them health and safety from harmful technologies. No public official has the intrinsic authority to violate our human rights. Any decision of yours affecting our community should be based on the precautionary principle of doing no harm.
Thank you. That has not spoken on item number 1 on our agenda that wishes to do so. This is the time to do so. Please state your name for the record and we'll give you 3 minutes. Good morning.
Good morning, Bruce Canner. It's commonplace in this county for public officials to say that their hands are tied. I've heard that expression so many times by the 1996 Telecommunications Act. As Dr. Chase stated, this is actually false. The Telecommunications Act says that communities cannot deny installations for environmental reasons. It's quite clever. This act was actually written by the telecommunications industry, and this is now 30 years ago. And when you think about it, it would be insane for them to put into law a statement that said that you can't prevent an installation because it harms human health, because that would be patently unconstitutional. But our local authorities are acting as if their hands are tied. This is shameful. The telecommunications industry cannot get insurance for the harms of their technology from any carrier in the world, and this has been amply documented. This is a document from Verizon itself, and this is a letter to their shareholders. They're saying,
And it's a filing to the Securities and Exchange Commission. It says, our wireless business also faces personal injury and consumer class action lawsuits relating to alleged health effects of wireless phones or radio frequency transmitters. We may incur significant expenses defending these lawsuits. We may be required to pay significant awards or settlements. It says alleged health effects. These are not alleged health effects. There are now thousands of studies which show the harm from these sources, and there are no studies by the government, which supposedly exists to protect us, that's its justification for existence, of the exposures that the people of the United States are being exposed to. Barry Trower, that Marilyn has talked about a lot, he did an actuarially based study that showed that the majority of children, current children, from the exposures to EMF, not including their own cell phones, would be infertile by the time they reached child-rearing age. I also want to say that it's not just 5G. 4G technology, when it was turned on, incapacitated many people, including the staff at 5 branches in Santa Cruz who had to leave the business. It also killed trees. That's 4G. We're facing an apocalypse, and we are allowing this to happen without considering alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you. That has not spoken on item number 1 on our agenda that would like to do so. If you've not spoken on this item and wish to provide comments, now is the time to come forward. Is there anyone else?
I didn't speak, but I gave my 3 minutes.
No, you've spoken for 3 minutes. Your time away, you cannot.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
application 171372.
You have
Final call if you've not spoken. Okay, so I'm going to close the hearing.
No, you were going to have the Verizon lady address
Sir,
the 5G
have a
threat.
seat, have a seat.
You said you would have her address that.
Okay, sir, if you interrupt me again, we're going to ask you to leave the hearing room. As I said, we will have order in here. We're not going to speak out of turn. Listen, we've given everyone 3 minutes. It is almost 10:15. We will ask a question, we will go through the various questions or issues that were raised. I've been taking notes, listening carefully as everyone has spoken. So we will ask about 5G and the other questions that were posed. So at this time, before we get into the specific questions, I want to ask staff, when was this application filed?
It was December 19th, 2017.
When was it deemed complete?
Sorry, I don't have that right off.
Okay.
Looked up.
Okay, why don't you take a look for that? While you're doing that, let's ask the applicant to come back and address if this is for 5G.
Good morning once again, Tricia Knight. No, this is not representing 5G, and as part of the package of the staff report, there is a radio frequency report that shows the frequencies that are going to be as proposed with this project, and 5G is not part of that. I don't have any answers with respect to 5G. It is evolving technology. That's not what the application before you today is to address.
Would this facility allow for modification in the future to accommodate 5G? You know that it would?
That request, as any request for modification to any part of this facility, would come through the planning department and before you. And so it's not as if Verizon can just go up to the facility and modify it. It is approved if you choose to approve this project.
My question to you was, would this facility allow for you to modify the facility in the future?
I don't have the answer to that. I don't know enough about 5G to answer.
4G cannot be modified to allow, you don't know.
I don't know what the equipment would require for 5G yet. I don't know what the antennas look like. I don't know what the supplemental equipment looks like, so I don't have enough
But it is
information.
not for 5G. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Correct.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
So when was it deemed complete?
June 18th, 2018.
Did we obtain a tolling agreement, or do we need to for this?
Yeah, at the last hearing, we had the shot clock expires on, I think, the 14th, and we were working
December?
with, Verizon was going to work to extend that.
Okay. Okay, I've got some additional questions that were posed by members of the public, but what I'd like to do at this point, I'd like to, because I need to confer with staff regarding a couple of the questions that were posed before we get you answers. So let's go ahead and we're going to take a 10-minute break at this point. And restrooms are around the corner, and we'll reconvene in 10 minutes. Thank you. Take your seat, and we'll start up again. Okay. So let's go through the questions, the issues that I took note of. One of them had to do with a mock-up. So staff, I'm going to ask you, was there a mock-up done for this? And if not, why?
No, mock-up was not done for this project. Typically, mock-ups, at times, they can be costly to the applicant. In this case, is a small parapet above the building, and enough information was provided in the visual sims for staff to determine that, the level of visual impact. Typically, like a new ground mount facility, a standalone tower, that would be a situation where we really want to consider a mock-up. If there was like some sort of a boom above the building that rose well above the height of the existing building, we'd probably call for a mock-up, but it certainly is within your authority to require a mock-up if that.
Well, once again, the height of the building is 18 feet?
Let me verify that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the existing the existing rooftop elevation is 16 foot 8 inches,
Okay.
and the maximum height of the proposed parapet wall is 20 foot 5 inches.
Okay.
And
Parapet wall, and the antennas are actually below, or beneath
Yeah,
the parapet wall height.
they sit slightly below that. The antennas themselves, structurally, I believe that the antenna itself is about approximately 2 feet in
Okay.
height, but the enclosure around it would be a height of 2 foot 8 inches.
Okay.
With a small, kind of a heat shield over, so it raises
Okay.
the height of that 2 foot 8.
The adjacent building that the previous microcell was approved on, previous WCF was approved on, is that a one-story or a two-story building?
That's a one-story building.
It's a one-story building, and do we know if the height is greater than the height of Wilson's Tire?
Just slightly below, based on the elevation here on sheet A3, appears to
Okay.
be slightly
But
below.
once again, the overall height is about 20 feet, 5 inches, I think you said.
I'm sorry, yeah, to clarify, the existing height of the buildings would be about 16 feet, and then it would raise approximately 4 feet to that overall height of 18 feet for the new facility.
Okay. So, let's see. So that's mock-up, we've dealt with 5G. Parking spaces. How many parking spaces are on this site?
As indicated, it's very limited in parking. Typical of service stations, there's areas for vehicles to maneuver in and around the various bays. On the north side of the property, there's one designated parking space, and where the property line kind of splits with the Star of Siam Thai restaurant. There is the location of the proposed ground mount facility is currently used to stack tires.
Okay.
So the placement of the ground mount equipment won't impact existing parking in that area.
So a zero-sum net gain or a reduction in parking as a result of this facility.
That's correct, and that's really important given that parking is an issue in Soquel Village. So we wouldn't want to eliminate parking on site for an unmanned facility. In itself, the facility doesn't generate parking, but we certainly wouldn't want to lose parking as a result of some ground mount equipment.
The ground-mounted equipment, is it enclosed so that if children from nearby schools came by, because I know there's I think there's like a market or something on the adjacent parcel also, so if they were...
Maybe the applicant can clarify whether or not there'll be a fence around it, but I do know that cabinets are locked so that you cannot access the equipment itself.
Is the applicant here, or the applicant's representative, I guess? Can you clarify? How is the ground equipment secured?
As staff has stated, it appears as though there is no fence around it, as that would impede upon the parking situation, but as you stated, the cabinets are locked.
Okay, thank you. Staff, what's the height, I guess, of the equipment?
It's just below 7 feet.
16 and 7 makes 23.
Okay, I know that there was some discussion about a gap in service, but FCC, I guess the FCC rules don't require that they demonstrate a gap in service. Is that correct? I think that is
my understanding that a gap in coverage could also mean capacity of the system. So for clarification, maybe I just defer to the applicant.
Yeah, I don't think they need to show a gap in service at this time. I think that's the FCC, unfortunately, that's their recent rule. I think we clarified that the fire station and Terra Woods preschool on the other side of the street of the fire station are about 200 feet, right? From somewhere between 200 and 250 feet.
Yeah, members of the public were clarifying distance for schools.
Okay.
And also wanted to clarify that there are a number of schools within 1,000 feet of the proposed facility. You asked me earlier if there was, what's the closest school, and based on the GIS system that we have, is the property line to Soquel High School is the closest school boundary to the proposed facility.
Is this building considered a historic building or historic site?
No, it's not.
Okay, so as part of the, I guess, the county's study that was done a number of years ago, was not picked up or identified? Because I know that there are some historic buildings down in the village, but this was not.
This is not one of the historic buildings.
Okay.
Would you like the...
Let's see.
Yeah, tell her to guess.
So there was an RF study done for this.
There was, yes.
The energy study was done, and what did it conclude?
Well, it concluded, most important, that the project would be below the threshold for significance as defined by the FCC, and specifically would operate about 29% of the maximum permissible exposure limit at street level, and 3.8% for any members of a nearby building.
Okay. And this is considered a co-location facility, correct? Under FCC, their latest definitions.
Their latest definition, yes, this is co-location.
Okay. Okay, the ground equipment, would it be would it just be painted, what, green, gray? Artwork, what, if it's 7 feet high? And I guess the applicant, if you can come back, why is that a 7 foot high
It's just the nature of how the equipment inside that cabinet is configured. This isn't visible from the street. It's in the back of that building. So we hadn't proposed to paint it, but we're not opposed to that either.
I'd like to also add that, as indicated, it is in the floodplain, and the equipment is required to be elevated above the base flood elevation. So there is, they can't mount it right on the ground because it would be within the floodplain. So they have to elevate
So that's
that.
taken to, that's part of the 7-foot overall height?
That's the overall height,
Okay,
yeah.
correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. One other question for the applicant. Would they be looking at future expansion on that rooftop?
There is no intention for expansion at this time, and if there was, we'd have to go through all the proper channels, but there's none to my knowledge at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I want to speak to, I heard a lot of testimony regarding radio frequency, the radiation or energy levels or EMF, and the impact on health. And I want to make clear for the record, and actually indirectly thank Marilyn. You give me a number of articles and documents and tapes over the years that I've carefully listened to. So I do agree that radio frequency levels that are extreme or intense do have an impact, I agree, on human tissue, our eyes, our neural systems, that if it's extreme or at very high levels, we are impacted. And I think that scientists, medical professionals, and others agree that if you have extreme radio frequency levels, there is an impact to human health. So for those individuals that have come and testified today or previously, I thoroughly agree that if you have excessive levels, there would be an impact. However, in reading the staff report and what staff just indicated, this particular facility, based upon its location and based upon previous testing or engineering analysis conducted by the applicant, would not produce excessive RF or EMF levels. Now, the issue that I have to look at in addition to that is whether or not there's a visual impact. And that's why I asked, once again, what is the overall height of this facility? And I went out 2 times on 2 occasions and looked at this building at Wilson's Tire facility and the surrounding uses, parking. I agree. I think someone had testified that parking is tight over in that area, and it is, I agree. Probably in the entire village, it's really tight and difficult to find parking. But once again, staff indicated that there is no decrease in the number of parking spaces on this site. You really don't need a parking space for this particular facility. The applicant has testified that the equipment would be locked. And so based upon the, I believe, minimal height increase of the parapet surrounding this, a 4-foot high parapet is a standard parapet height above a roof line that we see throughout the county. As a matter of fact, oftentimes for commercial or industrial facilities, buildings, I often see greater than 4 feet. I often see anywhere from 6 feet to 10 feet high parapet walls. This one is the same height as what I typically would entertain for a residential building. And this is in, I asked staff, what's the zoning? It is in the C2 zone. So I am convinced that based upon the engineering that was performed by the applicant and that we will require additional testing at a later date for this facility, that residents will not be exposed, that the firemen that testified that the any surrounding school children or the preschool children or their parents should not be affected by excessive or extreme radio frequency energy levels. Based upon that, I am going to make a determination that the environmental review that was conducted for this project is complete, and I'm going to certify an environmental document for this project and declare that no further environmental review is required under the California Environmental Quality Act, and I am going to approve application 171372 based upon the findings contained in the staff report and include the conditions, and include as part of the conditions that the color or painting of the equipment which is behind the building will be in a color or material that blends with the surrounding design or landscape. I'll let staff come with the wording for that.
Would the color of the building be sufficient?
That's fine, that's sufficient. So having said that, that concludes this matter, and I thank you for attending. And we move on to item number 2.
You spoke falsely.
Okay.
You said Verizon had testified.
Okay, sir.
There's no testimony.
Sir,
She
as
wasn't
I
under
indicated,
oath.
we are
Nobody
not.
testified.
Shame on you.
Nobody cross-examined him on the fact. This is phony. This hearing violates common law due process.
Okay.
It violates what the California law
Thank you.
requires.
We will take
This is
a
a fraud.
5-minute
An
recess
absolute
before we move
fraud
on to
on the
item number
public.
2. Thank you.
This is in-house research, Verizon.
We'll take a 5-minute
Normal
recess.
frequency create cancer.
Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Normal
We'll move on to item number 2.
She is not even from Verizon.
Where is your extreme?
You and your staff are using presenting falsehoods. You're presenting deception.
Unwrapped with normal.
This is absolute fraud on the public and the record.
Verizon does their own research.
Normal frequency.
They don't tell
Shame
you
yourself.
If there's any risk at all to our children, we shouldn't take it.
Go. The reality is, this is fraudulent, false. The staff submitted false information. They tried to mislead us that only the Soquel High School. My notes show they were deceptive time and time again. Wanda, whatever her name is, it's clear to me, as a smart person, she had her mind made up. She wasn't going to listen and absorb any of the comments of reason, and she's ignored mountains of scientific medical research that any wireless is dangerous. She also ignored the fact that this woman is not from Verizon. She's a sub-tier consultant. She called it testimony. It wasn't testimony. She wasn't under oath. Tricia, whatever her name is. She's not from Verizon. This is a fraud. And the county government, damn it, is participating and is complicit in this fraud on the public. It's deceptive and deceitful as well as dangerous to every walking, living thing in Soquel in this instance.